we made the decision just to sort of rip it up and start again. We walked away from it, which actually was quite a big risk in that we didn't know what the next step was after that, but we knew this wasn't right.
Welcome to season 10 of How to Start Up, the podcast helping you start and scale your business with advice from entrepreneurs on what to do now, next, or never when scaling your company. This season, we're focusing on all things brand, so you'll hear from a series of amazing entrepreneurs on what they've learnt in their own journeys. Hosted by me, Juliet Fallowfield, founder of the B Corp certified PR and communications consultancy, Fallowfield & Mason. Our mission is to enable you to earn your communications in-house with a long-term view. Building an engaging brand is one of the most challenging parts of starting a company. This is especially true in competitive sectors where you need to cut through the noise to create a connection with your target customers. It's this reason I wanted to hear from experts on how to build a brand from scratch. Lucinda Chambers and Serena Hood are co-founders of Collagerie, a leading fashion, interiors, beauty and lifestyle marketplace. The former British Vogue editors founded Collagerie in 2019 and have quickly built their brand through interesting and dynamic ways. Lucinda and Serena share their advice on what to do first when building a digital brand and how to ensure your brand story and visual identity work well together.
I mean, huge congratulations, guys, on what you've done. It's incredible.
Oh. Thank you.
Have you taken a breath yet and gone, wow, we've done this?
We do sometimes take a moment, actually. I think it's really important to do that, especially when we're sort of doing an event or when we're about to launch a collaboration. I think Serena and I are quite good at going, wow.
I'd love to chat to you within this conversation about the fact that we've both come from very good training backgrounds of Vogue and Chanel, which are two of the most prestigious brands in the world, to suddenly doing it all on your own and then building a team and building this brand is obviously what we're going to talk about today. But you started Collagerie in 2019, so pre-pandemic. I mean, the first thing I wanted to ask you was, where did you start? What was the first thing you did?
We started with the idea, Serena and I were having a coffee and a sort of catch up. And, you know, a bit like you, Juliet, when you said that about Chanel, you know, you've got a big beast behind you. You know, Serena and I were very privileged at Vogue that there was an incredible infrastructure and network of brands, photographers, creatives. They all came to you. You know, you just had to sort of sit there and go, yeah, bring it in. I want to hear about everything. We were saying, where would we get all that information from now? Where would we get all that information in one place? And Serena and I have been equally obsessed by fashion and interiors and indeed travel and beauty. So we were going, I wonder where we get that all from. We both looked at each other and it was literally, as they say, a light bulb moment where we thought there isn't any one place. You know, we love luxury, we love discovering brands, we love affordable product. You know, and we thought, well, if there isn't one place that we can think of, we need to start this. We need to solve our own problem. We need to start this in order to create that space. I think we also thought in a sort of general way that people are very overwhelmed by the amount of choice, but also underwhelmed with how that choice is laid bare. You know, so we thought there is this gap. So it really made sense for us to create it for ourselves, really.
Did you always have in mind it was going to be an online platform?
Yes, actually, it was always an online platform. I mean, from the very beginning. You know, not to say that we don't definitely have, you know, the idea of bricks and mortar on our roadmap, because we do. And actually, we've done a number of pop-ups and it's something that we want to continue doing. But from the beginning, it was always sort of dreaming up this platform that not only... It wasn't just solving the problem in terms of, you know, being the customer ourselves and wanting to create something that felt very aspirational, but also very inclusive. We also felt there was a sort of a moment to create a magic to shopping online. And I think that we'll go into it further, but the branding and the design and the look and feel of the website, you know, was always going to be rooted in storytelling and how we can drive commerce through storytelling. So, you know, one of the big challenges, you know, from the start was how do we extract this vision of this site in our minds to actually what you see?
I mean, it probably was the biggest challenge. I think we always, like Serena said, thought of a platform that really felt unanxiety inducing, as Serena said, storytelling, to create a really, really beautiful platform where, you know, an archet pair of trousers could sit side by side with a Chanel handbag and look equally at home, in place. So that was really from the start, that the look and the feel of it, and that people would be taken on this fabulous journey and be really involved in it, was absolutely key and central right from the beginning. So probably that was our biggest challenge, actually, to make it as beautiful as what was in our heads.
This is so interesting because for me, I built my website on Wix. My brother actually builds websites. He's like, just do it yourself because then you know how to brief a designer. Yeah. I still don't know how to brief a designer. I've tried so often to extract it out of my head and give them as good an opportunity to translate that out. And please don't look at our website. It's incredibly corporate and dry. And I know that. But I look at Collagerie and it makes perfect sense. You look at it, it's beautiful. The user experience is wonderful. You see this incredible curation. You kind of made it look easy, but I know it's not. No. How did you do it? How did you even start getting it out on paper?
It's interesting you say that because, when we go back to the beginning, we had actually sort of been taken on by quite a big agency who we were flattered. We said, we have X amount of budget. Would you be able to help us build this vision in our minds? And we got 6 months along, put quite a bit of money into it and time. A lot of time. And we were no further than where we were from the start. I mean, what was interesting is they just could not extract what our vision was. We made the decision just to sort of rip it up and start again. We walked away from it, which actually was quite a big risk in that we didn't know what the next step was after that, but we knew this wasn't right. And from there, actually found sort of a smaller designer. There was just the synergy was there from the start. It went along much smoother and much quicker. And then we had a separate team who built it. And so, I guess what we're saying is that everything did fall into place, but it didn't fall into place easily. It didn't fall into place in the timeline we envisaged, and it didn't fall into place with the kind of budget we had to begin with. But the kind of takeaway was that I'd say don't kind of stop until you get exactly what you want.
We knew in our gut that it was, and our instinct told us it's not going in the right direction. Right. And as Serena would say, you have to rip the Band-Aid off. And walk away from something where we were flattered by, but we knew it wasn't working. And I think, it's better to just nip it in the bud, start again, and go for gold. Hold out for something you really are blown away by, which we did.
Your gut feeling is so important on so many areas of business, but that translation of your visual identity or creating your visual identity for Collagerie, do you have any advice for people sort of where to start? Mood boards, how would you brief a designer? How would you interview a designer? Who would you go to first? Visual identity over brand tone? If you could look back and do it again, what would be your first thing you would do?
Well, there was a lot of sitting at the dining room table here with a lot of mood boards. And one thing we started with actually was something which we still have because we absolutely love it. And it was a bit of a starting point of Collagerie, which is something called In the Mood. And, what we felt very strongly from the beginning was that often people don't know what they want to buy. I mean, there's somebody who thinks, I want to buy a pair of black sandals because that's what I actually need and want. And I've got an outfit and I've got to complete it. So we do that. That's absolutely fine. But there's also something called In the Mood where you just want to have a lovely journey. You want to have a beautiful journey that inspires and delights. You might think you're wanting a pair of black sandals, but actually in the end, you've been captivated by a lampshade, and that's fantastic. So In the Mood we still have, which is just a piece of storytelling and a piece of content that really is holding you by the hand. And it can be anything from clouds or green stripes, and the green stripe could be in a shirt, it could be in a cushion, it could be in a lampshade, it could be in anything. But it's a mood, and that we still have and probably will always have. And it's just one of the things that we started with. And it was the sort of starting point of, this is what we want the website to be. It's a kind of real... It's a feeling. It's not purely transactional. It's not just, boom, bish, bash, bosh. We've got that as well. But we've also got something that's as close to a magazine that you flick through and you return to and that you save and you put on your wish list, and we inspire and delight, and I think that's a really important part of building something that feels very different and feels very aspirational and inspirational.
And becomes very much part of your brand's DNA, because your website is such a beautiful discovery. You could just browse it. It's sort of delicious in that sense that you might not even go to it to buy anything, but you can just learn more, discover more in a very enjoyable environment. You're not being, it's not sell, sell, sell. I don't feel like I'm being marketed to, but the aesthetic, the tone. But was that something, given there's two of you bashed heads on? Did you disagree on? Did you always have the same sort of aesthetic idea around your brand that you were building?
It's funny. I think, Lucinda, I remember at the beginning, the first thing, we need to have a Pantone book. And Lucinda used to cut all these little colors out of this book and put them together and say, colors talk to each other and see these do and these don't. And actually, I learned a huge amount. I've always been in love with color. I mean, and that actually, goes back to sort of A level and the whole project being on the color blue. But I've always loved color. And obviously, with Lucinda's background and experience, she's been, editor, stylist, designer her whole career. I really learned so much on the journey about color and why colors work, why some don't, how to piece them together. And I think it's interesting. I think that when you do go to Collagerie, it does feel like a brand in itself. And I think that was always really important too, is how we could create something bigger than just ourselves. And it feels like it is that brand. It's just everything combined into one brand that we feel speaks to millions.
I always do think colours talk to each other, and they can be really noisy conversations, or they could be like a quiet whisper murmur conversation. They don't have to be loud and shouty all the time. They can be soft and gentle, but they do have to say hello to each other on some level. Colour was always really, really important to both of us. And I think the colour palette, we worked hard on it to get it right. And, so that there are different colours that match different edits. But as Serena says, it feels all of a piece. And that's very key to design. And it's key to everything that we do, really.
The whole point about Collagerie, and in a sense, is actually the context and how we contextualize product, of different categories, at different price points from different designers. But interestingly, you can take two moods that are so completely different. You can take something like Lucinda said, that very maximalist story with lots of color, or a theme that is very minimalist, even sort of like a thin line. And it all works within the brand, within the kind of template we have. And so how we navigated designing almost that framework of where anything could sit there was part of actually the fun and the joy, but also the challenge. And that's why Colors That Talk was so key. And we feel we found them.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what you see today.
Because obviously continuing to have new content, new pages, it's not a static website. That's always going to grow. And that's another challenge, that template, it needs to be iterated in many different ways.
Yes.
For someone starting out, because I've sort of come into my business with a comms background and I've learned payroll and recruiting someone and firing someone and all of the hats you have to learn. Yeah. I also know that I need to learn more about visual identity, visual design, brand architecture. What talent would you say a new founder absolutely has to have to create their brand?
I think if you don't have it yourself and you know that, I think it's really important if you know where your skills lie and you know what you're short on, is finding then the people who can translate that. Yeah. And listen, not everybody's going to be good at everything. For me, just saying this on a personal level, Serena says she's learned from me about colour, but I've learned about business from Serena. I think what I found fascinating is that business is creative. I always thought business, not at all a dirty word, but it was something that I never was really involved in. I always loved commerciality within a business. I loved building brands and seeing what sold and what didn't sell and why it didn't sell. And I've always been really interested in that. But business-wise, no. I mean, Serena's so business smart.
It was good. You've got different skills.
Very different skill sets.
Learning on the job, but yeah.
And I think that's really unbelievably fortunate and lucky. I feel that every day that I have a partner who gets on with what she's brilliant at and I get on with what I'm good at. And that we always meet and talk about everything. But I think if you're alone, that's a very different place because it can be lonely. But I think if you acknowledge what your strengths aren't and then find the people who can do that, I think we can't all of us be good at everything. That's impossible. And you set yourself up for failure. So it's always about finding the people. It's always about finding your community who have a skill set that's different from yours.
I think that's where network comes in too.
Yeah.
Being able to reach out and not being shy to do so to those who, have done it or you admire. Oftentimes there's been brands we don't know or people we don't know, but, we want to meet them. So it's just a cold call sort of on DM or LinkedIn. I think when you have that drive to start a business, you are so motivated to drive it forward that actually formalizing actually asks. Yeah.
It overcomes your fear, your imposter syndrome, your doubt. You're like, I want that ending over there.
Yeah.
Going through this difficult, uncomfortable ask hand up for help. It gets you there.
I think also one thing too is just not thinking of everything you need to do at the same time and getting overwhelmed by that. It's actually thinking, okay, it's the next step.
Bringing it back to brand, that practical, I need a graphic designer, I need someone to help me with my tone of voice. Like, what order of things would you tackle it in? Establishing your brand's identity.
I think we started with the visual and then we got the tone of voice.
And was that through a graphic designer or a branding expert? Because there's so many people with so many different sort of titles out there. It's really hard to know who to go to for this help.
Well, we looked at a lot of things that we admired, but we wanted to make it very much our own and have our own voice. So, as we said, we did find a really great agency in the end who could absolutely deliver.
And were they a branding agency?
Yeah.
And then, I think what was interesting actually at the beginning, we tried to go for someone who could do everything. Who could do branding and build. And actually what we realized is that maybe you can't put all your eggs in one basket. We separated them out. But I think the starting point would be to actually go and look at who is on your inspiration board. If you're building a brand, what company out there do you think has a great tone of voice? Who's built a gorgeous sort of website, or where does it look and feel? And then ask them, just reach out to them. The internet is filled with information. And a lot of the times you can actually figure it out yourself. So I think it's just, research.
I'm obsessed now. Anytime I come across a beautiful user experience on a website, I email them to be like, who helped you build this? And it's the same thing. They could have had an in-house graphic designer and then helped someone with a technical build, or they've externalized the visual side, but they did their own copywriting. And I think it can be overwhelming because a lot of founders that we work with, so in my day job where we teach people how to do their own PR, they're so caught up in their visual identity and their brand. It's like, that's great and it needs to be considered, but no one's going to be looking unless you tell people what you're going to be doing with the business. So you need to kind of do both. But for me, my challenge is that visual part, because I'm a wordy person, I'm not an image person. And I can see something at the end and go, yes, that's gorgeous. Like I look at your website and think, oh my God, it's delicious. But I have no idea how many iterations you'd have had to go through to get to that end point.
It was a lot.
But I'm sure. But I also think it was a lot, although weirdly, it didn't deviate massively from our initial thoughts at all.
And it's amazing you were aligned on it, because two heads are brilliant and supportive, but sometimes you can disagree.
But I think if you come from a visual background, you're always doing mood boards for everybody, really. And so that's a bit of a second nature, I have to say.
Yeah. And so for someone's not got that background,
I think it's meeting lots of people. Honestly, I think a lot of it, when you talk about gut, so much of it is the chemistry too. So I would say, like, with everything from the dots to LinkedIn to Instagram, there's so many choices. And also, there's no formula. There's no sort of like, this is exactly how to start it. You've just got to start putting yourself out there. And I think it's almost like dating.
You find the person to execute it. Yeah, you do. You do.
It's funny what you say. There's so many podcast interviews we've had that have referred back to, it's like Hinge or it's like dating. It's like the gut feeling, in the first 3 seconds it's not going to work. And recruiting people too, they can have an amazing CV, an incredible cover letter. It's only until they start. And I think a lot of people are shy of starting because they need to have everything perfectly done, and it's not going to work. There's nothing like putting something out into the public to be like, oh my good God, I've got to get on with this now. For me, that was the day after redundancy, putting on LinkedIn, I'm doing this. And I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. It took 12 minutes on Company's House and suddenly there's a business.
You've got to do it.
You've got to follow through. Yeah. And that kind of, okay, rabbit in the headlights. And then you get really snappy about who to ask for advice and who to ask for help.
One more piece of advice is, do your diligence and put in writing deliverables and timelines and sort of, clauses, because you almost sometimes learn too late and you think, gosh, I wish I had sort of checked the fine print. So I think, one thing I would do from the beginning is just always have a paper trail.
And documenting as well is almost like a diary entry of we achieved this week. And our team calls every Monday. We say success and failure from the week before. What capacity are we? Amber, green, and red. And just to share, because we're remote first, share that. Oh yeah, that didn't go well, but we've learned this from it. And
I like
recognizing stuff.
Yeah. And actually, we always used to write. We still do. When we thought of the name, we were actually just about to go into a meeting, and we hadn't got the name quite right yet. We always knew that it had to be a word that. Well, actually, Serena said, wouldn't it be great to have a French word? I'm not sure why, but she something French. I think we had C curated.
Yeah.
That was cool. We got hung up on that quite a bit. And it's also about letting go of things as well. Like, you get hung up about something because you think, yeah, that's right. And then you sit with it and you play around with it, and maybe it's been taken or it's not quite encapsulating everything that's in your head. And then we were thinking about collages and decoupage. And it actually, it kind of went decoupage, collage, collagerie. It actually was a sort of like and then boom.
It is sort of bringing things together, essentially.
Yeah.
The French twist.
Yeah.
I love
Swedish French twist, exactly.
I interviewed the founder of Necessaire, and she's like, we wanted to create body products that were necessary, but we wanted a bit of flair. So we called it Necessaire. And I was like, it works.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. And once you've built this brand, and obviously the name is probably, choosing the name is probably like buying a house. You have to fall in love with it and then let it go. Fall in love with it again. Oh no, that's not going to be it.
Yes.
And then you stick with it and it's there for life. Are there any other tips you'd offer founders of sort of how to iterate that naming process? Is it writing it down? Is it brainstorming? Is it telling other people?
Well, probably, I think it is a bit like, Juliet, you're right, buying a house. It's when to let go. I think it's so definitive, finding a name, that you really almost want to get that in the bag. And actually, it doesn't have to come like a lightning. It can be a process,
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of letting it go, trying things out, not to be in a rush. So just to sit with it, because it's important. It's really important. And not to be afraid of really sucking it and seeing it.
Yeah, and live with it. I think there's so many things you can do to get the company going before you go into that branding exercise.
And ask friends if they like it. Yes, sometimes you have to spell it quite a lot, but now it's in the lexicon. It's really great.
People
Collagerie.
know what Collagerie is now. And in a very quick time, considering you've built this new platform. And once you've done all of that amazing legwork and you've got your visual identity and you've got a bare bones of your website and all that structure, what was your go-to-market plan of like delivering this brand out into the world? Did you kind of keep it all quite close until it was finished and wonderful and then go ta-da? Or how did you start letting the industry and your future clients know that it was a thing?
Before we launched, and we just had dinner here with, I think it was about 16, 17 women, all different ages, wasn't it, Serena? And people whose opinion would be really valuable to us. People either we admired or knew or all had different experiences, but all shoppers. And we did have a focus group here, and we had a whiteboard, and we sent them a really in-depth list of questions before they came, and they all got goodie bags, and I think we had a chicken curry. That was really valuable, actually. Just, they all came out of goodwill, and that was our first kind of where we slightly
started
put it out there.
Yeah. And I think, from there, when we first launched, we did hire somebody to do some PR for us just at the beginning to get it in a few key titles, which we know we definitely saw impact from that. And on day one, we saw people on the site transacting, which was fantastic. Really? And a network effect, the power of word of mouth. I mean,
the best possible PR.
It is, especially at the beginning. I think what we've really done successfully is be able to grow the brand on the brand marketing rather than be a company based on performance marketing. I think we do understand the privilege that we've had, given our backgrounds, is that we were well placed to do this. And I think that between our industry contacts, our press contacts, our relationships with the brands, it really helped us have that kind of advantage of getting Collagerie out there into the world. And still today, we're very limited in terms of how much paid performance we do. I mean, everything really is still rooted in how we grow Collagerie by brand marketing.
Do you go into a bit more detail about what you see as brand marketing? Because a lot of people don't understand it. There's PPC, there's paid, there's social, there's PR, there's CRM, and it could be totally overwhelming.
Interestingly, when it comes to the brand marketing side of things, that's where we see press, influencer, working with sort of tastemakers that we admire, and they talk about Collagerie on their social. Email has been a huge, huge driver for us from the very beginning, actually. Not something we anticipated, right, Lucinda? I mean, I think
we wanted to do a beautiful email that you wouldn't just delete, and we worked very hard on them, but it has been incredible, our email.
And I think we've become quite synonymous with it too. What's interesting is that when we meet people and they talk about Collagerie, they say, oh my God, I love your emails, which is reflected in our engagement stats on it. But in the world we live in today, and like you said, you can do so much yourself on a shoestring. You can launch a website on Squarespace or Wix. You can create an email and start it with your network. You can talk about it on Instagram. So there's so many ways you can get going. And I think that, the passion and the idea of how you drive it forward.
So brand marketing is more owned and earned, not paid. So you're looking at the POE, where paid advertising, earned is PR, typically you're earning media on other platforms, and owned your own platforms that you can control. Sounds like you were really using your own platforms and leveraging those with those brand partners. And presumably you had a very good curation of product on the site, and they were singing your praises as well. So that augmentation grew, but it makes it much more authentic. And obviously we all know that if an editor is talking about your brand rather than you, it has more value than if you paid someone to talk about your brand, about saying how amazing you are. So that's really interesting that it's grown authentically.
But it also lends itself to the type of business we are, in that, we don't have a product we are selling on a shelf or in a store. So, we had to really think about how we get new and returning customers to our website.
Would you say that builds more loyalty with customers than doing more of a paid campaign?
Depends what it is, I think. But I think certainly, as Serena said about the email, people say, I keep them, I save them, I love them. I think everything we do is built around a sort of passion for the product. The words are really important to us, so we have an amazing writer. Everything comes from it's a very overused word, and, authentic. We'll put products up that we really believe in, and that we really, whatever their price point is, we love them. So I think the taste and the trust is absolutely vital, and it is the heartbeat of Collagerie. That what we're doing for people is cutting out all the hard work, cutting out the anxiety. Everything we push up, we love and we believe in, whatever the price point is. And if everything feeds into that, everything, our product collaborations, we don't design a shoelace without loving it and believing in it and wanting to buy it ourselves. So if it all comes from that place of authenticity and passion, then I think that works.
It's interesting you say that, because I've interviewed somebody who has a company that trains people to create work cultures that are remote. Like, there's a whole variety of people I chatted to, and every single person is be okay with a roller coaster, get a good accountant, and really believe in what you're doing, to the point if someone puts a gun to your head, you still believe in it. It is so key, because when you're exhausted or had a bad day or questioning what you're doing, you come back to that. It's like, no, I have to. It's not a choice. I have to do it. And that resolution in that, I think, is really powerful. But it keeps you really focused as well. And that's what comes across with Collagerie. It's so every touch point of your brand is consistent. And that builds trust in it, that it's tied up, it's not confused, I can rely on it.
That's a lovely thing to hear. Oh, Julia, that's very nice.
Well, you've worked so hard on it, it's paying off, hopefully. Is there a golden piece of advice that you give to founders when they're starting to develop their brand? I think what you said earlier was really interesting about trusting your gut feeling if you are outsourcing, like knowing that chemistry check. But is there anything else you'd like?
Learning to walk away, and I think always to be on receive mode. And I think what Serena and I both said is ask advice. I think that it's free and it's available, and don't be afraid of being vulnerable about what you don't know.
Yeah.
You can't know everything.
What's been interesting on the journey, especially from a kind of fundraising standpoint, is you'll get lots of people thinking and telling you, giving you advice, but also thinking that they've got the answers. It's like you said, being so focused on what you're doing, you cannot be all things to all people.
Yes.
But I think you also can be creative in how you diversify the business and how you grow it. Because, what you see today with Collagerie is not exactly the same. There's new products, there's new revenue streams. So I would say it's a balance, and everything has to feed in to exactly what is your value proposition? Why did you start this? What do you offer? And is this something that speaks to the customer? And I think that if everything feeds into that, you'll be on the right trajectory.
I love that.
But I think you need to be very resilient.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's where, having a business partner has been just invaluable in so many ways. But particularly, you'll have those days where somebody who might be, sort of decades in the business or thinks, okay, well, this will be a great idea, but it's just not right for the brand. And you can really question yourself and think, well, should I be pivoting this way or should I be doing that? But actually, your company best. You are, you eat, live and breathe it. And I think that everything has got to feed into that gut feeling of what works.
That's another dating analogy. Someone said, if you have to ask the question, it's a no. It's like, should I text him? Does he like me? Like, if you have to ask, it's a no. And it's the same with business. If you're doubting something, listen to that gut feeling because it's protecting you. Aside from imposter syndrome, which is also meant to be protecting you, but can be really not helpful.
No,
but that
not helpful.
Nagging feeling, I find actually just going for a really long walk. So we track all our time in our team with Toggle. And I've put in a walking toggle and a podcasting toggle and a reading toggle. So we should be reading the press the whole time. And Francesca and the team came back and said, I really stuck on this problem. And I went for a 3-hour walk and I've got this answer and that answer and this is solved. I was like,
a bit of time out. Yeah. When you talk about instinct and gut, it's often based on your experience and your knowledge, but you just think it's gut, but actually it's not.
It's informed. Yeah. Something that we do is the previous guest has a question for our next guest. Okay. And our previous guest was Titi from Ori Lifestyle. So she's created a hair care brand because she had her own hair loss journey and worked out through hair education she can fix this problem. She's absolutely killing it.
Wow.
Her question for you was, what was the one thing that you did that completely transformed your business? For her, she redesigned her packaging in year 1 and it was a huge investment and a massive risk, but it got her all of the recognition in retail that she needed.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Is there one thing that you did that was just game changing?
Have the idea.
Want it? I have to say, I think something that came quite organically, but actually kind of like was not in our plan, like in our business plan, was collaborations. Product collaborations have been, one, just so exciting. I'm wearing my shirt today. We did with nothing underneath.
Yeah.
And we talk about the brand marketing. That has been an amazing way we have grown, at different phases with the different launches that we've done. Somebody said to me the other day, there's nothing quite like Collagerie out there. Nobody collaborates in this sort of space with brands the way you do. And I thought, you're right, actually.
That's pretty unique.
It takes you out of being a marketplace and it gives you both a voice and recognises your experience before Collagerie. And that shouldn't be underestimated. It's nice that is a very subtle way of saying, guys, we back this. Like, we know what we're doing.
Yes.
Because of these beautiful, like the With Nothing Underneath shirt that you're wearing today. We see that on their social, on Pip's social, on your social. It has a consumer. Approach.
Yeah.
The cross-pollination of audience or that lovely ripple effect from a business perspective is wonderful. But the integrity behind the actual product and the design is there as well. So I've been watching what you've been up to since 2019, but it's so smart, but it's also really fun.
It is. Yeah. It's really fun.
But Lucinda will go to the brand and work with them so closely on the design and the creative. And I'm always just chomping at the bit to see kind of what she comes back with. I think what's been so sort of special is the way that they're so reflective of the brand itself, but then Collagerie is interwoven. And we say it's a collaboration, but it really is,
Yeah. Yeah. It's super important when, brands approach us. And I think the first one we did was actually our dream. And Serena always goes, manifest it. And it was the Conran shop. And we did our first...
Go hard or go home, guys. Like
Conran shop. I know. It's wonderful. It was a great, great start to what has just, as Serena said, gone on to be really successful. I think the way we work with brands is very Collagerie in the sense that we never throw the baby out with the bathwater. We absolutely respect that brand. We see maybe what they're missing or what they could do with or what they haven't got and what they could do and the potential and the possibilities of the meeting of the minds of Collagerie's experience and talent with that brand's experience and talent. And so it is a fabulous, truly collaborative experience to bring all of us around the table and to do something that feels very, very bespoke to that brand. And yet they've got something that maybe they wouldn't have done, thought of. But it's very true to them. And I think that's it's a real joy to do that, and always keeping that brand in the top of your mind to reflect what they're doing, but to amplify what they're doing and to make it just that bit more shiny and a bit.
But
more
also, your Collagerie client that's deeply loyal, like when's the next one? Wednesday. That anticipation piece, it's golden for any brand to have that like wait list effect. So huge congratulations. What would be your question for our next guest? And it could be anything about starting a business, how to scale, what not to do. It's always interesting to ask this question because people are like, well, today my question is Estee Lalonde, actually from Mirror Waters. She's like, when was the moment you thought you were going to give up and what pulled you back from that moment? Because she had a really tough day the day before. And she's like, it's fine, I'm good now, but yesterday. And it was, bless her for being so heartfelt. But in the trials and tribulations of running a business, when you're just like, really? Is there something you'd want to ask in terms of challenge or joy? I love the fact you're both deep in thought.
I know, because it's a really good question, but it's also where people are on that journey, and trying to think of somebody who's ahead of us, who we'd love to ask some proper advice.
I love the fact you're taking it so seriously. This is great. Thank you.
Because advice is precious, and we need to make it matter.
I never normally share who the next guest is, but let me see. Interesting. It's Atisha from By Rotation.
Atisha, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, well, that would be a good, thank you for sharing that.
I want to know from Ashita how she finds the time to seemingly do it all.
Yes.
You seemed, I have to say.
With grace.
She always looks, she always looks fabulous. She's at the gym. She seems to have such a great balance of everything while running a very successful business. And she must wake up very early. I think she must be one of those 5 a.m.
That's the question, Serena.
Perfect.
When do you wake
I'm
up?
already
How do you
answering
fit it all in?
No, that's perfect.
How do you fit it all in?
Done. I'll put that in.
Yes.
No, I'm also curious because sleep is the only thing, time and sleep are finite. Money comes and goes, people come and go. I interviewed the head of neuroscience at Oxford University about sleep, and he's like, if you do not protect your sleep, you're running the red light on your business on a daily basis. I was like,
So interesting you say that, actually, because I'm a big sleeper. Like, I'm usually in bed by 10 o'clock. And I was at dinner last night with a friend. She goes, we've got to go because you've got to be in bed by 10. I said, yes. But I agree.
Well, it's very healthy because from what I learned from Russell, the more hours you get ahead of midnight are worth double what you get after.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. I think being in bed by 10, at latest 10:30 is the way to keep yourself.
And then also, Serena, I think really clever that everybody knows.
Yeah.
So they've got the sleep memo. Yeah.
Love that.
Bring dinner forward, like start at 7.
I'm just gonna start getting up and leaving. I'm not even gonna say goodbye. They're just gonna know.
I love this. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. So lovely to see you.
And
lovely to see you.
Virtually.
If you'd like to contact Lucinda or Serena, you can find all of their details in the show notes, along with a recap of the advice they have so kindly shared. Thank you for listening to How to Start Up. I hope these conversations offer you some confidence, encouragement, and reassurance that you're on the right track. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I'd be so appreciative if you were to rate, review, and subscribe, as it will really help other people starting a company discover it.